And I don't want my videos to just save you the time and give you the advice and information more readily and more quickly. And it's not just about motivation, it's about courage. It's about giving you that belief in yourself that you can do this. Anyone can do this. And hopefully with my help, you can definitely make that decision more easily. And hopefully you can make that next step to reselling. Practical tip. Personally, I recommend niche stores. And that doesn't mean just one particular category or niche, but and you can have niches, but don't be an everything seller. When you're kicking off and you're selling random things from within your house, that's fine. But I personally believe you can learn the system far better and far quicker by niching down, because that will allow you to set up systems more readily for the goods that you've got, because you'll be selling the same types of items, which means it's the same type of listing, it's the same type of packaging, it's the same type of storage, which will help you streamline the running of your business. And then you can look at pivoting, expanding, and becoming an everything seller if you want to down the track. So it's sort of like you start off with the ability to be an everything seller. It didn't work out that way for me, because the items that I wanted to flip within my own house were items that were part of my niches anyway, part of my store's theme. But if for you, you might sell, I don't know, collectible spoons or posters or something like that. And then your actual niche that you want to get into is clothing, or more specifically, women's clothing. And that's fine, that's great. And that's what you want to do. And then as you get really structured in how you want to tackle your niches and apply that in your store, you might find that, okay, I've got that nailed down, I can look at something else. So niches, and then look at becoming an everything seller if you want. It'll just help you. Trust me. Okay, so I want to give you a little bit of insight as to what my setup looks like and what I did to make it work. Now, we have a single garage attached to our house, and that had already been, like, prior to even looking at this venture, we'd already professionally had that garage divided and turned into 2/3 of a bedroom that entered into our home. And then it had a solid wall, professionally done. And where the garage door opens, that 1/3 of that garage was basically storage space, a second fridge, freezer, that sort of thing. It was that space that I would end up turning into my eBay store. I mean, it's tiny. It's only 2.8 by 2.5 on either side. That's meters, by the way. So let's say 3 meters in width by 2.5 meters each side to the door. So that's my setup. Practical tip. I highly recommend you having your workspaces to do with your eBay business separate from living areas. So ideally, have your items stored in maybe a shed, a garage, a spare room, or something along those lines. And in those same spaces where you're storing your inventory, that'll be where you prep your inventory, pick, pack, photograph, all separate from your living areas. That's going to help you set certain schedules for when you want to work in that space and when you don't. But for those that share your home as well, it's more pleasant for your stuff not to be scattered through the house and to bring your work into the home. When I started, I used to do a lot on my phone. I do less on my phone now. I really just use my phone for photographs and for picking. Scroll through and find the items I need to pick. But everything else I do from my computer, I just find it quicker and just more comfortable. So that is still inside. I already had the office space set up. That's no different. But the workings of my business is all out in its own area. Initially, I was using a combination of recycled packaging, such as your cartons and cardboard, as well as buying things on the fly from my local post office. By the end of the 3rd month into selling on eBay, I had also set up the following things. So the first thing I set up within the 3-month period of starting to flip on eBay was a My AusPost business account, and they're free to set up. it allows you to basically do all of your bookings of your freight through the comfort of your own home. If you have a thermal printer, and I highly recommend that, you can print your own labels out and stick them straight on there. You can even use a normal printer, but ink will be less cost effective. You'll be forever buying ink, and then you've still got to glue or sellotape the label to your parcel. And AusPost business accounts come with different tiers, so the more that you ship through it, the more you start saving. So you've got band 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm currently band 4. Don't know if I'll ever make band 5, depending on how far ahead I want to take eBay before getting into anything else. But yeah, so it definitely saves you money. Now, those of you that don't live in Australia, don't feel disheartened, because every country is going to require you to do your own research and investigation into what's best. So in the States, you've got, differences between, priority plus ground advantage. You got FedEx's, UPS's, you got, all sorts. In the UK, everywhere will be no different. You will have something that will benefit you. So this is a reminder to you that you need to make sure that you're on top of your game. Do not use eBay by default. All right. Their costs, whilst it's flexible and it's great to start out with, over time you will save yourself far more, or you'll get other perks if you look and start taking action yourself. So the second thing involved my office setup. Up until that point, I was actually photographing on my kitchen table, which is fine, but the lighting was average, right? So I went out and I bought as much of this cheap secondhand as I could, because I didn't want to be investing a great deal into an early venture, and it was only a side gig at this stage anyway. So I went and bought like a secondhand desk for $10, and on that desk I stuck some white core flute board, 3mm. It's like a plastic, almost corrugated plastic board that's white. It's great for your photographing. I basically put one that's 1 meter by 800 deep and another sheet of that on the back. Now, benefit of those is, 1, they're cheap. 2, they give off a great light without too much reflection if you have your light set up properly. And 3, when it gets dirty and scratched to a point where you can't clean it, or it impacts your photos of your inventory that you're getting ready to put up on eBay, you can flip it over and get a second use out of it, both for the front and back. So that's a great thing. So I also got an LED light, really cheap. I just picked up a builder's LED light like this, and I literally put a hanger on the wall, so it hangs upside down off that, and I actually have it angled into the wall, so it's not directly onto that. So it just gives a bit of bounce back of that bright LED light. I can take photographs any time of the day, and I get a great crisp image, real cheap. They were like $22 Aussie, came in a 2-pack. I think you get a single pack as well, but it just made sense for me to get 2. At the time, I thought I might need 2 set up at the same time, but 1 is more than enough, and you don't get casting of shadows or anything like that. So other things that included were like proper packing tape. Got a lot of that. Your packing, your tape dispensing gun. I sourced some plain generic poly mailers. What else did I get? I got a chair, obviously, for sitting in there. I got a little I got shelves for all of my stuff to sit on, and I got a little table / drawer, which is where a lot of my packing satchels and stuff live, in the drawer. But the top side of it, that's actually where I sit down next to and I pack my goods. So in addition, there's a lot of packing items. I already mentioned the poly mailers, things like fragile stickers, because I wanted to go that extra step and show that I care when I ship stuff, especially going international. I just whack on some fragile stickers that don't cost next to nothing. Bubble wrap, thermal labels for a thermal printer, which I had bought as well, which saves you a hell of a lot of time. Again, secondhand, I didn't buy that new. Within your own country, there'll be benefits to different sizes, both cartons and mailers. And for us personally here, they have a type of bubble mailer and non-bubbled satchels as well, which are a fixed rate up to 5 kilo in different sizes. So, and I have a medium and a large bubble mailer, mostly for my board games, for the large, or even the medium, some of them, and for my books. Just quick and easy to ship off, and it's a flat rate, and some books can get very heavy. Practical tip. Okay, when it comes to thermal printers, firstly, highly recommend it. All right, if you're serious about this, even as a part-time gig, it's going to save you so much time. And especially if you're working part-time, you don't have a lot of time because you've already got a full-time gig. And then when it comes to this, I just highly recommend getting a thermal printer. What did I get? And I'm not sponsored by anybody, but what I did my research, and I ended up buying a Dymo thermal label printer, but it's a 4XL, so it's an older version. And the reason behind that is that it takes generic labels. And the generic labels are a dime a dozen, far cheaper than if you buy the latest release, which is a 5XL. They've then redesigned what labels are required for that, and they are Dymo's own labels. So there are no generic labels for that, and you'll get stuck paying a premium for your labels. So more cost effective because, one, you're buying secondhand if you can find a 4XL. They're a little bit rarer to find, but they're great. And the one I've got's been a workhorse, like it might be secondhand, but it's doing a great job. And it just uses generic labels. Practical tip: buy as much of your packaging materials as you can from eBay. Why do I say that? One, you can quite often find a cheaper alternative than if you were to buy it locally. Two, it's convenient because it'll get delivered right to your door. But three, when you're starting off, you have zero feedback. By buying these items off eBay, you're instantly accruing real quick feedback for items that you're buying that you need anyway. And be strategic about it. So what I did was I have some clear sleeves. They're referenced in one of my videos that's specific to how I pack my CDs and DVDs. Just a clear A4 sleeve. I buy them for a single pack on eBay and have them delivered. I get a feedback every time I do it. Yes, I could buy multiple, but there's no savings in me buying a multitude of them. I get them as cheap as I possibly can, and they're a single pack of 100 sleeves per time. So I buy one or two at a time. I'm not so phased on it. I'm not so hung up on it now because I've got over 1,000 feedback. But early on in the piece, when you start doing that, and you just get one, just keep tabs, make sure you don't run out. But rather than buy 10 and get one feedback, you buy 10 lots of one and get 10 feedback. And it soon escalates your feedback quantity. It is a practical tip, but it's a lifestyle practical tip. It's not necessarily an advantage for your eBay business, but it'll help your household out. If you have tied furniture within your house, and ideally like cupboards or shelves or drawers, anything that would help you, store your items for your eBay store, look at buying your home nicer furniture and put the older furniture or tired furniture out in your area where you're going to store your stock. Still with the practical tips, I don't mind using recycled cardboard. It can suit certain niches if it's like electronics. If you're selling the same sort of electronics like amplifiers, DVD and VCRs that are majority of the same size, you might want to invest in real quality cardboard and new cardboard boxes that you just sort of trim down to the size. But for me, in my niche, I just use recycled cardboard. A lot of the packaging materials that I actually buy off eBay come in a carton, and that same carton I trim down and use for packaging. But the real practical tip isn't just the fact that you're using recycled packaging, it's the fact that you turn the packaging inside out so that when you fold it around the item that you're packaging, the label that appeared on that carton is not readily visible to your customer. It looks a bit more professional and not like you're trying to upsell something else or you're sponsored by something else, or it's not as professional to have something wrapped in something completely unrelated. That way, it doesn't look like that. And your own labels, if you have them, you can stick on top. It looks great. Now, again, there'll be an advantage to you no matter where you live in the world to do the same thing. But for us here in Australia, and like I said earlier, I use the flat rate up to 5 kilo bubble mailers, both in a medium and a large size. Buy them on eBay again, but buy them in bulk. So the more you buy, you do save, and you save a heck of a lot on those here in Australia. So if I was to go and buy like a medium satchel off the shelf, it's about $3.50. If I buy them in lots of 100 off eBay, that's including delivery, it costs me $130. So that's $1.30 each. It's less than half, it's less than 50%. I'm saving about 60% per bubble mailer, which is brilliant. But yeah, so it's going to apply no matter where you are. You'll find better ways of buying your product, which still on the practical tips, plain generic poly mailers. Like you can, I think I buy like 500. Yes, they come from China, but there's about 500 for $40 delivered or something like that. And they are of a large enough size that I can put my large books. So if you can think of like a A3 size book will fit in there and you can cover it. And I put all of my books as a form of additional waterproofing into a poly mailer before I put it in a bubble mailer. So bubble mailer is not necessarily going to keep out all forms of moisture. It will do pretty well under normal circumstances, but if for whatever reason it was somewhere that was really wet, it's got added protection on the inside and your customers are going to love it. Practical tip. That was about 7 or 8 practical tips in a row. Now this one is definitely worth you keeping an eye on. Now, a lot of channels, and they're all great, have what are called affiliate programs with either certain businesses or certain products listed in either their video descriptions or in their bio description on their profile for YouTube. Word of warning, and this is not to take away from what any of these channels are doing. They do a great job and they deserve to be able to do that. But when you're starting out, you don't want to be spending that additional money to support these guys. Come back and support them when you've got yourself up off the ground first, all right? So just be aware that while there are affiliate programs there, they aren't necessarily the cheapest. So if they've got an affiliate link there for a certain type of packing, poly bag or mailer or anything like that, or boxes, whilst that's great, and if you bought it through that link, if they get a percentage commission from that, it's not necessarily the cheapest way for you to do it or the most effective way for you to do it. And your most effective way might not even be on eBay. You know, it could be locally. But I'm just letting you know that these affiliate programs, whilst they're great, just be wary of that. You could be spending, you know, even if it's a little bit more, you don't want to be doing that when you're just starting out your business. Every cent needs to go back into your business as concisely and directly as you can. So we're looking at 3 months into selling. I've done a ton of research, still doing a ton of research, but I still was making bad purchases every now and then. I was getting better at avoiding them, but there were times when I was guilty of buying at the heat of the moment because it looked great. I didn't comp it correctly, which is basically looking at completed listings on the apps. Like I told you before, the eBay app for your sell-through rate and your average sale price to give you an idea of whether it's even worth looking at. Then you can punch the more info into the eProfit app to find out what your true profit will be for that item. Anyway, I was guilty of still making bad purchases. An example, and this even still happened to me not all that long ago, really. So a thrift store had a sale on DVD TV series, all for $2 like each, which isn't as cheap as I'd like to have them still. I'd still like to pay no more than $1, but in today's current market and situation at thrift stores, you're lucky if you're getting them for that. And so what I was doing was I was looking at shows and series that where there was a large quantity of them. I'd do a quick look up to see how much I'd need to have a complete series there. So let's say, for instance, it's something that has 7 seasons, and I could see the 7 seasons there. I'd buy the whole set, thinking that the complete set is going to be worth a lot of money, right?
Do you want some help with that?
No.
Practical tip. Expect that you will make bad purchases, you know, or not necessarily a bad purchase, but you may put not so great items up on your store. I was guilty of doing this when I started, and that's because, one, I was buying hauls of X amount of books, let's say 100 books, and 10 of them I knew of, 10 of them I wanted, 90 of them I didn't know, but I still put that whole other 90 up on eBay. The truth is, a lot of what you get in the haul isn't worth your time to even put up there. So just be wary of that. But even your own independent buys, like those DVDs that I was just referencing, whilst I can make a little bit on it, it wasn't worth the time and effort really to be doing that. So, which I'd still consider as a bad buy. So, I've got another video that looks at the maintenance of your store. So for me personally, anything that's older than 90 days, there is a way within the eBay app itself and the dashboard, the web-based program, there's a way of you monitoring how old an item is so that you know how old the item is, but you can also see that, okay, so it's older than 90 days. It's not really getting any traction. I haven't had any inquiries about it. Let's start dropping it in price. And you drop it until you're at a point where it's still not moving, donate it. Just accept that we all make bad purchases, or we end up listing bad items that are just something that we accumulate through other bulk hauls or purchases that we make.
Man, that sucks! Sucks, true. I'm gonna talk to some people and straighten this out, man. Bunch of bull crap.
So it was around, sort of the 3.5, 4 month mark where I started realizing that I had a bad habit, whether I developed a bad habit or it was just sort of innately there and I was only becoming aware of it. I'm not sure which way. But what I was aware of, sometimes I found that I was just enjoying the hunt for that item out there in the wild. And that led to some poor decisions and poor purchases. But I also realized that sometimes I was doing that not just for the hunt, but because I was pushing myself to find purchases within my niche or niches. When I realized that, that's when a lot of research, additional research came in. I'd already been aware of it and tapped into it a little bit. But the importance of being able to pivot. You need to be flexible when you're an entrepreneur in general, but when you're reselling, you need to be aware of these things. And so I made a decision to pivot, which meant, I wanted to stay within the theme of my store all up, but I could include additional categories or items that would broaden what was available to me. I was better off to have a few more niches that allowed me to buy better product more frequently across any one of those, as opposed to sticking to only a few and feeling forced to buy subpar items because I needed them to be within my niche and I just couldn't find the items that I required. So for me personally, over the next 6 months, and I'm doing it all the time anyway, I originally started with video games was the main thing, and video game related. So consoles, accessories, anything that I could buy locally and flip locally for profit. This is before even eBay. But then I got onto eBay. I continued with the same things. And then my own items I put into that, which was more video games, CDs and DVDs. And I stuck with that for quite a while. And then when I got to this point when I realized, I'm picking up stuff that's just average because I want to keep listing and build up my store, but do I really want to build it up with average items? Not really.
Oh, hell no!
So I wanted to have better items, which meant I needed to expand what my niches were because that had to suit my availability with where I live and what I could source. So then we looked at, I started looking at specializing in gaming related books, not video games, but like role-playing games, something that I was big into when I was younger. So I knew that really well. Trading cards and trading card games, predominantly the non-mainstream ones that I was familiar with. That was, again, going back way too many years. Really up the ante on CDs. I could find there were some really good margins to be made on some CDs and help create a theme, which is one I wanted to touch on now. So whilst I'm a huge advocate for, a high sell-through rate and, a good average sale price, it's not your be-all and end-all. And you can find sometimes an exception to the rule that works for you from a theme perspective. And that's exactly what I ended up doing with CDs. So CDs, if you can think back to when you went into a CD store, quite often there'd be bargain bins at the front you'd flick through, you know, you pick up a few CDs that were on sale, but then you'd still make your way over to, you know, whatever genre you were interested in to flick through the vinyls, CDs, whatever it was available at the time when you were a young'un, and still possibly buy the higher end item that you purposely went in there for, or at least that category, that genre that you were going to buy. So you'd go up to the counter with one high end item and 5 discounted items. And I sort of thought, you know what, I want to apply the same thing. So when I buy a haul of CDs, not discount dollar-wise, but I don't discount any CD that I'm looking at, regardless of the genre. I do my research and my comping per item on there, and I'm becoming more and more familiar with other genres, that something I didn't really listen to, but there are some really valuable items in there as one-offs, but as well as the cheap ones, so long as you're not wasting a lot of time doing a lot in singles. But I find that I get so many repeat customers that I might sell 1 or 2 originally like that, but then they'll come back, and I had one just buy 16 CDs off me in one go, which that's one big order. Thank you very much. And they were all cheap. There's one decent price one in there. So 15 cheap, you know, bargain bin CDs and one good one. But he came to one place, got all of those together, and that works for me. That works wonders. Practical tip time. So when you're looking at pivoting, you don't have to look at pivoting within the way that I have and kept everything within a theme. And the theme is something that works for me first and foremost, because I know this range of products really well. But 2, the demographic that I'm sort of selling to, you know, they experience a similar range of products. So all my products were very closely knit. So what do I mean by that? Within my theme, when I was a teenager, we'd go to like a card shop, you know, like they'd have trading cards, sports cards and gaming cards. Those stores actually became quite a one-stop shop, and they would have things like, you know, role-playing games, and they would have obviously your card games and your tradable cards and comics and manga and anime, and, you know, the list goes on. And they became a one-stop shop. And so me and my friends, that's largely where we would congregate and go. And then from there, we'd go, other popular stores to visit would be your video rental stores back in the day, where, you know, obviously you've got movies, video games, for hire mostly, but sometimes for sale as well. And then from there would also frequent music stores. So those 3, if I thought about it, and that's, if I wanted my ultimate shop back in those days, it would be taking those 3, putting them all under one roof. That's basically what I've done. That's the theme that I've created. Now, that's not to say that that's for everyone. That's what this practical tip's getting at. If you're going to pivot and get into categories that don't mesh well together, right? An example would be, you know, you're a woman's clothing store, first and foremost, and then you want to pivot into car parts. They do not gel at all. So my recommendation there, now I haven't done this personally, but I know it's successful, and I can put you in touch with others that have done it, or I'll definitely find out the detail if you have issues doing it. But eBay does let you set up multiple stores if you do it correctly, all right? And each individual store can have its own category or categories. But the idea is that those stores work well together. That's the idea. And that's, again, you know, if you're going to become an everything seller, it makes your store a bit less of a go-to place because it's quite scattered. But whereas if it's a niche down, people remember, that's where I went to get that. I'll recommend that store to my friend who also wants to buy that sort of product because that's what they specialize in. So just keep in mind that if you're going to pivot into other categories, try not to keep them all under one store because it'll just confuse your customers. But where they are related, by all means, you know, and your themes can be nothing like mine. Let's stick with cars, for example, and let's say you were doing car parts. You could easily expand into like accessories, you know, like your floor mats and your seat covers and fluffy dice, things like that, they actually do relate. So keep them in one store. But where they're completely different, take them in separate ways. It's a bit more management for you, I will say. But ultimately, if that's where you want to go and you know those well, that's what you would do. That's my recommendation. So by this stage, even though pretty much a year has gone by, I still was only scratching the surface, and there was so much more to research and to learn. So now as we head into what it would take to sell on eBay full-time,